Okay, so this is Bipolarcast episode 6, and we have Maria Edwards joining us. Maria has an MSc in clinical nutrition, and she's an assistant professor in the Department of Nutrition, Exercise, and Sports. Has an interest in the ketogenic diet, and we met through Josephine Barberino, who is having the Keto Live conference, and she said there's this person I know works at the University of Copenhagen and is a great keto researcher and is coming to speak at the conference. And we'll probably mention more about the conference later on. But how did you come to be a keto researcher? And what we usually kind of start off by talking about what our lives were like before we found keto. Me and Matt both have bipolar disorder. And we both have been using a ketogenic diet ourselves. What was life like for you growing up, and how did you come to become a researcher in this?
Well, if I start with growing up, I mean, I did have my first depression when I was in 8th grade. And I don't think my parents really knew why. They took me out of school and I had some time off. And then during my teens, I struggled with depression, anxiety. And I did have, looking back, smaller episodes of hypomania, but I'm kind of an extrovert person. So I thought that, this is just me. And, sometimes in my life, everything was really fast. And then I had depressions. But it's a long story, but I was diagnosed with bipolar type 2 in 2016. And I had been severely ill for about 2 years or 2.5 years. It started with half a year of like really not mania, but severe hypomania that borderlined a little bit mania. And I thought, this was at that point, I was prepping for a fitness competition. I was losing weight. I was training a lot. I was taking a lot of courses to be able to enter the university. And so I was doing a lot of things, and I thought it was due to that. But that led to, after half a year, to like more severe depressive symptoms. And I thought that I was burned out. So I went to my doctor, my GP, and I said, I've been doing all these things. I think I'm burned out, having all these symptoms. And my mother, who's deceased, she was a doctor, and they had worked together in Sweden previously. And she said, actually, I think that maybe you're bipolar, because something could indicate your mother was bipolar. And I got really offended. I didn't show it. I'm not a person who shows it, but I was really, upset. And I was like, this is a crappy doctor. What is she talking about? I'm not mentally ill. I'm just stressed. But she asked me, so I actually changed doctors, but she asked me, can you think about it? Can you read about it? So I read about it, and something hit me, but then I was, no, I'm not bipolar. And then I went back to it. So it was kind of back and forward. And then I realized, okay, I am bipolar. And then I started to seek help. And then it actually took me 1.5 years, and I was acutely suicidal for 1 year until I finally found a psychiatrist that said, yeah, you are bipolar, I will treat you, etc. So that's the ketogenic diet came into. I have a friend in the US who introduced me to all these researchers in the US, and her husband started this metabolic health summit conference before it was what it is right now. And she was doing keto with her husband. They were doing parts of clinical trials, and they did things in dogs and stuff. And she said, try this. And I was like very skeptical, because I've tried something Atkins kind of diet before, but with way low fat and way only proteins on too low calories. And that made me a little bit hypomanic. So I was kind of afraid of doing that again. But I tried it, and I did get slightly hypomanic in the beginning, but then, it helped me. I've been on antipsychotic medication. I was on for 5.5 years. Now I've been medicine free for 8 months. So that kind of led me into doing keto, getting good results. Then I went to my professor saying, I want to do my bachelor's about keto. I did that. Then I did my master's about keto. And now I'm finished. So now I'm doing keto research. So.
Wow, amazing. And were you working as an academic during this whole time that you were unwell, and then you changed your focus when you found keto, or was this an interest you took on just after seeing the results of keto for yourself?
So when I got sick, like hypomanic, I was applying to get into the university. And then when I started to get depressed, severely depressed, I was actually just starting taking my bachelor's in biochemistry. And that was really hard and detailed, and everything should be learned by heart. And I had severe cognitive problems, and I couldn't. So I kind of changed my bachelor's to this nutrition bachelor that I have. So I mean, during my depression, I was doing my bachelor's, but then I got medication in 2016, and I was in the middle of my bachelor's. Excuse me. And then I did the keto, and then because of that, I started to do the research within, my studies.
How did you manage? We both went through university having bipolar and having very severe depressive episodes. And how did you manage to cope when you went into depressions and you have deadlines and exams and your friends want to go and party? And how did you manage to get through that?
I mean, it's a miracle in a way, because it's been a struggle. I think that when I was on the first year of my biochemistry, I did have a girl that, I didn't know what was wrong with me at the point, but she had suffered from stress previously. So she knew a little bit about anxiety and stuff. And she helped me a lot, she helped me with homework and stuff like that. And then because I got more and more sick, the last part of my first year as a bachelor, I was actually, how do you say in English, like had a sick leave the last 2 months. And then it was summer vacation, and I was extremely sick at that point. And then because I had done a previous year at bachelor's, I got what we call merit. So the first year of my other bachelor, I did actually have a lot of open spots where they said, okay, you have done something, you have done math, you have done physics, so you don't have to attend. So for like 2 months, 3 months, I didn't really have any courses. And that was really good. So because of that period when I was the absolute most suicidal, I was catatonic for almost a year. I did go to some stuff, but I mean, if you would ask my group members, I was zoned out. I was late. It was a struggle. And I mean, if you look at my grades in some of my courses, especially in the first year of my bachelor's, they weren't that great. It was just like surviving everything.
Could you describe what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. It's horrible. So when you initially got the diagnosis and you were put on medication, did you notice any relief in your symptoms from the meds when you were first put on them?
They saved my life. I mean, I met this amazing psychiatrist. This was number 4 I went through. I just told her my story. I mean, I am very intellectual, and that's both a downside and a strength. I think that when you have an illness, you can go in and research everything, and you're very proactive in your illness, even if you're depressed. But I told her the whole story. She agreed with me, as I said. And then the good thing with her was that I was extremely scared of the medication, because I had read about every medication you could get for bipolar and all the side effects. And I was afraid of gaining weight. I have actually gained 70 pounds or something. I'm still trying to lose it, but I'm like, right now I'm 30 kilos heavier than I was before medication. So she just told me there's antipsychotics, anti-epileptics, there's this, and if you choose this, you will lose hair. If you choose this, you will gain weight, everything. And then I asked her which one she wanted me, or what she recommended, because she put it up to me. And she said, well, the Seroquel, I don't know how you pronounce it, but the antipsychotic medication. And I tried that, and I had suicidal thoughts every second of the day for like a year. I mean, I saw images of myself. I couldn't go past houses without counting the stories, because I had read somewhere that if you wanted to jump off a building, it had to be over 6 stories. I saw myself shooting myself, like really graphic things in my head. So after 3 days of antipsychotic medication, all the thoughts started to kind of be much better. And I think I was completely a different person within 2 weeks. And I have the benefit of that. I'm very, very sensitive. My body's very sensitive. So I'm getting a lot of benefits from the medication, but I got every single side effect you can get from that medication. I got like everything, like cramps and spasms and nightmares and nausea and all kinds of things if you read on the package. But because I've been suicidal for a year, I felt like, okay, if I can go through these physical symptoms, if only I don't need to cope with my head, you know?
Yeah.
So it saved my life. I mean, I've been extremely close to killing myself several times, and it's been circumstantial actually that it haven't happened. I mean, the time where I was actually closest to it, I went up to my attic actually and got a rope. I was absolutely devastated. I was so tormented. I couldn't sleep or anything for weeks. And then I went down, and I live in a building where the attic is just on top of me, or top of my apartment. And I have a lock, so I had my keys to my apartment, and I accidentally put them inside of my, the room in the attic, and then I locked it. So when I came down to my apartment, I couldn't get in. So I was sitting and crying with this rope in my hands, and it was 2:00 in the morning. Until the morning at 7, somebody could lock me in the attic and, help me get it, or I don't remember, but somebody helped me lock me in. So, I mean, it saved my life. It did. So I'm not, I'm very grateful for medication. I'm very grateful for being on medication for 5.5 years. I would not have been able, I think, to manage my studies without medication. But doing keto at the same time, the 1.5 years, I wasn't that consistent, and being more and more consistent and getting more into and doing some fasting, I think that, now I still have symptoms. I mean, I've had actually the last 3 weeks, I've had depressive symptoms, but I can manage it. It's not an episode. I can still go to work. I can still function. I can just do my work, but it's just like, you feel sad, you feel low, you feel not motivated, you don't feel joy, but it's kind of at a level that it's okay. I know that it will pass. But the illness is always there.
Yeah, I'm sorry that you went through all that. It's just it's so hard for people to understand what bipolar depression is like. Can you describe the difference between like the catatonic depression you're describing versus like feeling down or feeling sad, like the difference between that kind of depression and what people might normally understand as depression?
I mean, I think that the earliest depression I have when I was younger was more when I was like 14, and so they were more like a clinical normal kind of a depression, even though I think that I've always been bipolar. But I try to explain it to my friends in the way that I feel a very big difference between my symptoms and my mood that is not my symptoms. Yeah. So if something, for example, something happens in my life privately or within my work, and I get upset, there's like this thing is happening, and then you get a response, like an emotion, a feeling, or if you've been working too much, you're tired. I feel like my depressive symptoms is almost like having a flu, but it's just in the brain. So it feels like I don't have a reason for feeling like this. Something, it's like the other emotions of sadness is coming from the outside in the way, or there are reaction from something coming from the outside. The other is just like you wake up and you can't think, and everything is you feel disconnected from everybody, even the closest people in your life, your boyfriend. You feel like there's like such a huge, people don't care about you, everything is worthless. You don't have any joy. I mean, even the lighter symptoms I've had the last couple of weeks, I have this amazing career going on. I mean, I'm on this podcast today, and I actually felt actually low before I came to this podcast. I do feel better now, but I just felt like an hour ago, I felt like, yeah, I don't feel good. I feel introverted. I'm going to do this podcast. I don't really feel joy. I have a good day, but it doesn't really matter because everything is just, and it's not correlating to your life. I think it's very hard to, I know that you're nodding, so you know what it is, but I think it's very hard to explain for somebody who's not bipolar. And then also about the catatonic state, it's crazy because I had been going to the gym for several years and my brain did not work. So if I could actually make it to the gym, it took me a day to even just drive there. I looked at the machines and it was almost like I was demented. I didn't know what to do with them. I was looking at them. It's like, what am I, like, which one should I start with? Or what should I do? Like, it is crazy. It's like, it's absolutely crazy.
I know how frustrating it's been for me when everything in my life and face value seems to be going well. Relationships are good, things are good, but for whatever reason, I feel terrible. Yeah. And like you mentioned, the disconnect between what's happening and what I feel, and that's kind of what I know. Also, what I wanted to ask is how you came across keto and how you started and what the effects were initially going forward and how you managed to get off your meds. I know it's a lot, but
I mean, I started with this friend, Shannon. We were having a lot of conversation on WhatsApp, and she was really good at, I was sending a lot of voice messages and she responded. And because I did have an interest in nutrition and a kind of a background, and I was doing my bachelor's in nutrition. So this with calculating, weighing food and calculating carbs, and I had this program where I would put everything I was eating to kind of see the macros and everything. That wasn't far away because that was something, familiar for me, that I think it's fun. I mean, a lot of people think, oh, this is just so, but I actually like that. So I think that she kind of taught me, what the macros should be. And then I've always been a person who loves meat, who loves dairy, who loves cheese, loves bacon. And I didn't struggle. I mean, I didn't struggle with the compliance of it. And I mean, sometimes I did, but it was more, I did quit sugar completely because I've been an overeater and using sugar as a thing to kind of medicate, sometimes. So I stopped sugar around 2012. So I was kind of out of that. So I didn't do a lot of carbs already. But so I just did it and continued with it, and started reading about it. And I was still on, so this was 16 and I was still on medication. Stopped medication last year in August. So that was 2021. So I think that in 2020, I said to my psychiatrist, I would like to try, and if I can just, lower my dosage just a little bit. I didn't have the intention right away to get out of my medication. So I was on 300 milligrams of the medication I was on, and I was really scared, and I was really sick also in the beginning. So I tapered it off for like several months, I think 4 or 5 months, until half the dosage. And then I was on 150 milligrams, and I was on that for a year. And then actually something happened that, I don't know if you've experienced this, but when you're on antipsychotic medication, or the one I was taking, you actually almost feel like you get a higher dosage of medication if you eat high fat, because the fat, the food lays in your stomach a long time. So I don't know exactly the mechanism, but it has been, some people say that, the medication lays in the stomach longer, you will absorb more. And some say that medication that is affecting the brain is smaller molecules. So if you're in a ketosis, you get more of those into the brain. But I did get a lot of side effects. So at the same time, the keto helped with some side effects like the extreme hunger. I did get a lot of nightmares, and there was a lot of things that when I was higher up in ketosis, I felt more drowsy and stuff. But I just got tired of being on medication. I said to my psychiatrist, I have all these side effects, and I used to cramp up in the evening, like laying like this, like almost the half side of my body, my face and my leg was cramping. And then I also, actually the reason, I remember now, the reason I started actually to taper off the medication was because my EKG, my heart was affected of the medication. And the cardiologist said that it's not serious if you don't have a lot of other risk factors. It's okay if you need this medication. But I was like, okay, is this good for me a long time? Like my EKG was fine before medication, and now my EKG is kind of not fine. So that's kind of how I initiated. But now when I stopped, I did it the way you're not supposed to do. Like I did it quite fast. I think I did it in 3 days. I had a plan, and I just started to taper down. And then I just one day felt, okay, I don't want to take this anymore. So in the beginning, it was like, I think one of the first days, I think my boyfriend said something not specific, and I just couldn't stop crying. I think I cried for an hour. I was like, I don't know why I'm crying. I was just like this, like he was just like, honey, you okay? Well, I don't know why I'm crying. I was just like a wreck, but it solved itself.
You know what I found is that I've been tapering off my own antipsychotic that I've been on, Zyprexa, from 5 milligrams down to about 3 right now, continuing to taper. And there can be some pretty horrific withdrawal symptoms.
Yes.
But what I've realized, and also working with my mom and my psychiatrist, is that the GABA and the effects of being in ketosis while doing the taper can actually mitigate some of the withdrawals. So it's been far easier than I think it normally would have been. And so I continue to taper.
Yeah, I did get a lot of physical side effects, like even more physical side effects than the mental. Like when I started with the medication in the beginning, I felt really dizzy, and the floor could just do like this. There was some crazy stuff. I couldn't turn, I couldn't dance. When I was driving, I got really like motion sick. And I thought that would go away when I tapered the medication, and it actually got worse. So I was several times, I almost fainted, and I felt so bad, and my heart was pounding. And so I actually this Christmas went to the doctor, and I said, I have all the symptoms. I think it's withdrawal symptoms. And they said, nah, it's 6 months since you stopped your medication, and that can't be it. And I said, it started when I stopped the medication, and I know I did it quite fast, but I've just had all these physical symptoms. And we tested everything, my ears, my sight, went to the cardiologist again. My heart was still off, but there wasn't something with that. And during Christmas and New Year's, it just slowly disappeared. So I'm 100% sure that I'm almost for 7 months have had severely symptoms of getting off the medication, even if I've been in ketosis, quite all the time. So
it was interesting how you were describing the depression and these like physical symptoms of going through treatment and bipolar, because a lot of people see it as it's just purely mental. You feel sad, you feel really happy, and then you just alternate between these. But actually it affects your whole body, bipolar disorder, And when you're saying about being catatonically depressed, like, I don't think people always understand that this means you can't move. Like, people can be stuck in their room for weeks on end. People that are normally highly productive, like you were doing a degree in studying biochemistry, and you're probably used to being high functioning, and then suddenly it's like the legs are taken out from under you, and you can't move for several weeks. And it's and so it kind of indicates there's something about bipolar that's an energy disorder. It's not just neurotransmitters and neurochemicals. There's something fundamental about the body's energy that is shifting in bipolar. But it's funny because all our treatment mechanisms are all around neurochemistry, or the vast majority of them. And so we're great we're great advocates for medication as well as keto, because and certainly we're very early on in the research for keto, and so people do need to keep taking their medications while they're trying it. And so, but the thing that we feel like keto shows is that it's affecting the energy levels of people. When they go on it, they feel increased energy, and it can kind of help with this catatonic states that people go through. Did you experience an improvement in your kind of overall energy levels doing keto? Did you feel like you were less prone to having catatonic states, or these kind of like low energy states?
I mean, I think that when I was severely catatonic for a long time, think it was over half a year, and then I just have this bouts of, energy where I could do a little bit more. I wasn't on keto at that point, and I tried something else. I tried, omega-3s. I tried all kinds of stuff. I also tried the Pericon, the herb that you're not supposed to take if you're bipolar. And I was just so desperate. I couldn't get any help. And I bought it at a health store, and I read that in Germany or somewhere, they gave it as instead of an antidepressant. So I gave the doses, and I got into a mixed state. So that was terrible. Like, I could be catatonic, and then I could be up running, and then I had like suicidal thoughts at the same time. I had slightly mania. That was, crazy. But so I think that, the medication was the thing that took me out, both of the depression and the catatonic state. And then I started the keto, but then I was on medication, so it was hard to kind of tell, which was what. But I do feel that, for example, right now, I've been fasted for like 3 days because I've had this, recurrent depressive symptoms for the last couple of weeks. And I do feel better today than I did 3 days ago. So I can feel for every day I fast, my mood is getting better. So I do feel that if I have I don't experience anymore the catatonic, but I do experience when I feel depressed. The cognition is a huge problem. I can't think, I have a lot of self-discipline, but I can't concentrate. It's hard to get work done. It's really hard to initiate something. You can sit at work and you just look at your computer. It's like, oh, I have so much to do, and all this emails, and I feel like shit. And you just smile to people, and they're fine, hello. And then you go home and you haven't done anything. You've answered like 2 emails. It took you a whole day, So I still have that kind of energy depletion that comes with depression. But and also, if I didn't have a job, I would feel like I would be laying in bed all day. But I still have the kind of drive to go to work, even if I'm not, some days, if I'm not doing much. So I think that keto is helping with that. I think that, I do feel that the times where I'm getting out of ketosis, or my ketones are getting lower, I'm much more prone to symptoms, and I'm much more sensitive to stress and to all kinds of stuff. So I think it's really, really, really helping me, or I feel it is tremendous.
It's interesting because when, people have been using this in epilepsy for almost 100 years, and bipolar and epilepsy are sharing many of the same medications. And a lot of people are using keto as a way to stop seizures in epilepsy, but it's not, they can still, if they fall off the diet, or if they have their ketones go lower for all kinds of reasons, stress, things that they didn't expect in the food, they and have seizures. So it's not like, it's an active thing that you're participating in. There's some people, it's very common. I asked the Charlie Foundation about this, this Ketogenic Diet charity, and they said that it's quite common for kids to stop having seizures altogether if they stay on the diet strictly for like a year or 2 years. So there is, so that does happen in epilepsy, where you can stay on it strictly and then you have remission of symptoms. And I've seen one blog from someone with bipolar who's had that experience. And so there might be
adults, or
yeah, he was I think he was in his 30s, and he did it very strictly for about 2 years, and then just went back to eating normally, and had never had symptoms again. And it does seem that there's some different responses to keto that can happen. And so, but like, you know, it's not a cure in the sense of that it will for every person make it just completely go away for the rest of your life, but you can use it as a way to manage your symptoms in people who respond to it very effectively. And I think that it'd be really interesting to find out what is the difference between people like with epilepsy. Why do some people get better for life, and why do some people have to stay on the diet for, you know, a long time? It'd be really interesting to know. So how did you, so this obviously had such an impact on you that you wanted to research. How did you transition into researching keto, and what's your main interest now is traumatic brain injury, is that right?
Well, I started at my bachelor. I needed to do a bachelor thesis, and most in our education, we do kind of a review because you don't have time for 2 months to do a clinical trial. So I went to my professor and I said, you know, I've been since I started keto, I want to do something with this. And I said to him, actually, I want to do something with keto and bipolar. And there wasn't many studies, but I didn't know that at that time. But he said to me, you know, if you have bipolar, you shouldn't research bipolar. And this is something I've found in science, that if you ask scientists, a lot of scientists have some kind of motivation to why they're doing what they're doing. Like if they have migraine, they go and do migraine research, bipolar, whatever. So I did this review about keto in epilepsy in adults in 2018, and there wasn't that many studies. I think I found 18 studies at that point. And then I went on to my master's in clinical nutrition, and that part of that master's is the last 9 months you're doing a clinical study where you initiate it, you do the protocol, you apply for funding and everything. And I again went to the same professor. I said, I want to do something with keto. I want to do bipolar. And he said, no. And we don't have a lot of contacts either, you know, in the psychiatric, you know. And so he suggested brain injury. And so my study was actually both, because it was a feasibility study. So it was both. There was actually more stroke patients than TBI. I had 12 patients. So I think I had 3 or 4 patients with TBI, and the others was stroke patients. So it was a subacute brain injury. So everything from a couple of weeks after their injury to a little bit more, you know, when they're stable enough to come out of the intensive care unit. And then I finished last year in July with my master's, and the same professor hired me as an assistant professor. And I'm actually assistant professor temp. So I'm actually having a maternity leave position right now because I haven't done my PhD yet. So I'm planning to do that. So right now I'm supervising a study with the keto in PTSD patients in Oslo, Norway. And I am planning my PhD. I do have some plans about doing the brain injury again. The problem with brain injury is that it's a very heterogeneous, you know, a group is very different. So it's really hard to get a good control group, and there's very few validated scales and outcomes. We struggle a lot with what we want to measure if we want to look at something functional. So I may be getting an opportunity to do a PhD with keto and cancer. So it's kind of, I have, you know, keeping my doors open. For me, I want to do research career within keto. I really want to do something with bipolar at some point, but, and I do have a huge interest of the brain, you know, that's my main interest. But if it's bipolar, if it's traumatic brain injury or whatever, if it's brain tumor, that is kind of, you know, secondary for me. I think the intervention for me is the most interesting.
Traumatic brain injury is so interesting as well, because so many people that have TBI go on to have bipolar as well. So, you know, as if it wasn't bad enough getting knocked in the head, then you get bipolar as a side effect after it. And and I've seen there seems to be really interesting studies on how ketones can help with, did you come across ketone esters being used for things like TBI?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of potential in the exogenous ketones, and what I've been planning or we're doing also in the PTSD study is that we're adding some keto salts. We have the keto start. It's a keto salt, beta hydroxybutyrate salt that we are getting or giving them on top of the diet. So it's not, that they only get this, but they get the diet and then we give them that. But I mean, the esters have the potential to get you higher into ketosis, but the problem is it tastes like crap, and the spikes are also, it goes up and down. The salts are lower but more stable.
Yeah.
So I think it's still depends on, are you giving them enteral feeding? If they're TBI patients and they're laying in the hospital, you can just put it in their tube and then it's fine. When they get better and they need to drink it, do they want to drink it? I mean, if you also, my patients, and if you're brain injured, I did the bioimpedance measurements on them, and for body composition, and it's just like they didn't understand why they had to lay still for like a minute or two in this machine. So there's so many problems or challenges in doing clinical studies, but that's also what makes it fun, I think.
I went through.
So I've had like minor symptoms the last few weeks. It's the equinox. The days are getting longer and longer, always in late March. I seem to have some sort of mood elevation.
Yeah.
And it was actually becoming a little bit problematic. So I started taking Keto Start twice a day, exogenous ketones.
Yeah.
And there was always this question in my mind, and from the people I've talked to, about whether it's the mood stabilization is the result of your body naturally producing ketones, or whether exogenous ketones can have the same effect.
Yeah.
And so I started taking them. Moods just flattened out the last couple of weeks, taking exogenous ketones twice a day. It's fascinating. I think there's huge potential. I mean, and it's so interesting because it's such a burgeoning field of study, and we don't know exactly what these things do. There aren't extensive studies on them, but I'm very interested to see what's going to happen with the exogenous ketones.
I mean, I think it's really, really important research that's being done, because we know that with the ketogenic diet, if we look at epilepsy, there's a lot of problems with compliance, especially in adults. And it's not for everybody to restrict their carbohydrates and to be on this. I mean, I don't feel it's very restrictive, but it's also because I'm not a typical, I've been used on being on diets. I'm interested in nutrition and everything. And I also think that many people who has a motivation because they have an illness will manage to be on the ketogenic diet. But then there's families with kids and a husband or a wife that is not doing the diet. And I think that exogenous ketones can enhance the diet. But I also think it's, like you said, it's a huge potential for all kinds of patients and also other people who cannot manage, or if they are maybe doing a low carb diet or a keto on off kind of diet and they're not as compliant, that they can take the exogenous ketones as a supplement.
Yeah.
I mean, I do have them here because Silla sent me, who is behind the Keto Start, she sent me some. So I will actually try them very soon and do like a pilot on my colleagues. I have planned to do that with the Keto Start because we're using that in the study, but I think it's amazing to see what's coming out, with the exogenous ketones.
It's a great point as well, because we're so early on in this research, and it's almost like we've kind of discovered this unusual thing about bipolar, but we're quite far away still from perfecting it. The ways of doing the diet, what aspects are most important? Can we use ketone esters? Are there diabetic drugs that we could use alongside keto that might be helpful? Like, are there, all these things we'll gradually learn about, but it's at the moment, it feels very much like we have this tool, but we're kind of learning how can we use this, and what does it show about the illness? What does it indicate to us about maybe how we need to look at the illness differently? So it's going to be really fascinating to learn about. I know with TBI, like there's some period of time, like after the injury, it seems, where if you give ketones, it can be helpful. And I was speaking to someone yesterday, actually, who was saying that with Alzheimer's and things, it seems like there's a kind of window of opportunity to give ketones where before the neurons have become damaged, and if you can kind of give this early on, it can give them better outcomes. So many things to learn. We met because the organizer of a conference called Keto Live, called Josephine, had introduced us. And so you're speaking at Keto Live in June, is that right? This is very exciting because this is in a Swiss village up in the mountains somewhere. It's a very cool conference.
Have you been there?
I haven't. No, I actually used to live in Switzerland, but I've never been to Bergen.
But you're coming, right?
Yes, I'm going to come as well. So it'll be fantastic. Can you tell us what you're going to be talking about, what your presentation will be on?
Well, so she said this is actually my first, I mean, I've done 3 poster presentations, but I've never been like really a speaker for like an hour at a conference. So I'm very honored. And so she asked me to speak about my study and the one I did in brain injury. So it's going to be about, the background to why we're doing these studies in brain injury. And then I think that I haven't planned it yet, but I'm going to go through my study, my methods and the intervention and what I did and my results, of course. And then also just, talk about all the challenges that is in this population, because there is in brain injury, there's 4 studies with the ketogenic diet in the acute phase, because like you say, that's what I wanted to do actually also. But it's with all this field, like we're talking about now with research, with nutrition, it's so hard to get through in the healthcare system, to the professors, to the chief physicians, to just get to be able to do something on patients. So that's kind of one thing. But in my patients, they are subacute, so they still have lower consciousness, but it's different from every patient. But suddenly they kind of wake up more and they start to eat, and some are on enteral feeding for many weeks and months and for always, and some start to eat. So in my study, it was really difficult that I had occupational therapists that wanted to give them all kinds of products with all kinds of consistencies and stuff. And I had to find replacements for that with ketogenic, products. So I'm going to talk about, all these challenges there is to do something in brain injury patients, and try to keep it within an hour.
I can't wait. It's going to be great. Unfortunately, Matt's in Canada at the time. I was hoping we could come out and do a live Bipolarcast thing, but we're seeing if we can figure something out.
That's going to be quite the flight for me.
Yeah,
we'll see. I wish I could.
Yeah, the circadian rhythms suffer from these things.
We'll see. I haven't done a flight like that. This is the thing. I would have to plan out the sleep and the meds and all this different stuff. But I mean, you do it at some point eventually.
You can go to the Metabolic Health Summit in Santa Barbara in May.
Yeah, I'm close. I'm right there.
It's closer.
The circadian stuff could be balanced out by the amount of cheese that we'll be eating in Switzerland. That's pretty keto, right?
It's true. It's going to be an all cheese diet. It'll be great.
We'll figure it out. I think it's I was asking about where the venue is, and it's up in a kind of mountain village, and apparently their Wi-Fi connection is actually quite they don't actually have good Wi-Fi there. It's really up in the hills, so it'll be very interesting.
That's interesting, because I said to Josephine that I actually have that week, I do have one meeting I need to attend, on Zoom during the conference, but I figure it out.
Oh yeah, I think you can do audio calls. It's but you'll be having such a good time. You want to do meetings? We'll figure it out. We'll find some. I'm really looking forward to it, and it's loads of really good academic speakers on keto, and it's very scientific and clinical based, and so it'll be very interesting. I think they're releasing it as course modules as part of a kind of education training for people that want to.
It's very different. It's the only conference I ever heard about that had this, SME credits. I think it is. We don't have that in Denmark, I don't think, for doctors.
Yeah.
So that, that I actually need to do like a transcript of my speak, like almost every word I'm saying for an hour. That's going to take a long time to be a challenge, because she is actually giving that to the people who is taking it as a course or like a credit or whatever.
Yes, so I think the idea being to train, I guess, like keto. I think it's people that would want to deliver this to
Yeah,
their patients for different
yeah,
conditions. So it
yeah,
seems like a really good cause.
yeah.
I'll be translating mine from Scots into whatever to English, I guess. So it'll be very interesting to hear all the
But
different.
you're speaking too, right? Or you?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so I'll be giving a talk on this bipolar disorder, the
yeah,
pilot study that we're doing, and so we're doing this pilot study of ketogenic diet for bipolar disorder
yeah,
with the Bazooki Brain Trust, and this is taking 25 patients with bipolar, putting them on a ketogenic diet, going through MRI scans, doing blood metabolomics, every testing we can and trying to find out what's changing. I was actually they actually used me as a guinea pig for the MRI protocol a couple of weeks ago. I was sending Matt the photos of this, and they had me tied down into the bed and going through the scanner backwards. And I was asking, can you put on something relaxing, because we're kind of in a tube here,
yeah.
and they have a TV that you can watch inside, and I chose what was a nature documentary. I thought, oh, this is great, like it'll be super relaxing. That's great. It was like a tarantula mating sequence for half an hour of this documentary whilst I was locked inside this tube, and you can't move your head because you're completely pinned in. So that was
And
an
it's
interesting
very
experience.
noisy, even though if you have some earplugs or something, I think it's MRI. I've never tried it, but I've heard it's really noisy.
It is. It's like a heavy metal concert. It's like
Yeah.
constant kind of, and then so I then changed it to some Antarctic documentary, and some guy in the documentary gets frostbite and has to amputate his legs. So it's very relaxing. So I need to find some option that's going to be
And
safe for
you're
these
doing
scans.
this to your patients.
I know, I know. So I was like, can we just put on Teletubbies? Like, just something that's not going to offend someone.
Bipolar
But
patients.
exactly. But it will be
I
cool.
just,
Oh,
yeah.
sorry.
I mean, what kind of, how's the compliance and what kind of diet, like how's the intervention for these patients?
So we're working with a dietitian called Helen Grossi. Is amazing. She's been
Yeah,
doing it
I
for.
know her. Yeah.
Oh, cool,
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, she's super famous. Everyone we know knows her, and she's been
Yeah.
doing 20 years of delivering it for epilepsy and pediatric epilepsy.
Yeah.
And so she has a method of a kind of modified ketogenic diet for epilepsy. And we're aiming to get ketones in this kind of like 2 to 4 millimolar range
Yeah.
that seems to be reported in epilepsy studies. And we're going to do everything we can to maximize the adherence. It's kind of getting the balance between what's like realistic for a patient going into an epilepsy clinic, ketogenic diet clinic, and getting the support versus like all the additional stuff we'll add. So we're kind of debating over how much we add on top of what the dietitian
Yeah.
will do, because obviously that wouldn't be provided to every patient. But we're going to really look at ways of maximizing adherence and do an analysis of that afterwards. So
But they're
behavioral.
doing the diet at home. I mean, they shop and cook and they get advice about recipes or something.
Yeah, so she'll do training with them on how
Yeah.
to cook and what to buy, and they'll prepare the meals themselves. And then we have an option to deliver if someone's really struggling with the adherence for it.
Yeah.
And there was a large paper that came out recently on delivery versus provided prepared meals, and
Yeah.
it was showing much higher adherence with the delivered meals.
Yeah.
And I know, Matt, you were using meal delivery for. Are you still using meal delivery, Matt, for keto meals or?
Meal delivery, that's right. Keto meals, bunch of them
Yeah.
weekend.
What do you think about that for adherence? Like, would it be a
For me,
significant?
it's fine. For me, it's fine. I mean, I was pretty committed from the get-go to eat the keto, eat high fat, cut all the carbs out. But I don't know. I mean, my experience is it's worked great for me.
Yeah.
I mean, we have in our PTSD study, and we have Natural Ketosis, which is a company in the UK. I don't know if it's the same one who's delivering to you, but they sponsored all the meals for our PTSD studies.
Oh, wow.
It's only a small study with 10 patients, a 4-week intervention. The problem now is that the UK is outside of Europe now, and even though Norway is not in Europe, EU, they still have the rules. I don't remember what it's called, but the import of meat and dairy and stuff. So we actually had a lot of still struggling with kind of apply to be able to import this. And if we're not able to, we're going to import the kind of vegetarian meals, and then teach or guide our patients to kind of do some meat on the side. But the thought about having delivery is that you get everything delivered. You don't have to think about it. I think that maybe in Denmark, we don't have any companies. We don't have the same as you have in the US, and you also have in the UK, where it's more common, and it's maybe also in a price range that some people can afford. We have very few options. We have no keto options. So I think for somebody having an illness and being on keto a long time, I don't think it's an option here. But it could be really cool if we had a couple of companies that did this, here.
There's going to be so many more options in time. I think at the moment, a lot of them are kind of like medical foods. There's some medical food grade options which look a bit kind of like, rationy. But then there's natural ketosis looks really good, and there's some kind of more nutritious looking ones. So hopefully that will get easier to do over time. We've noticed we just started recruiting this week for patients, and the demand to study this is really high. Like we've had in about 3 or 4 days, we had about 60 applicants, and we're only taking 25. Wow. So people are really interested in finding out about what this does, and it's actually normally quite difficult to recruit for bipolar trials.
That's so cool. That's so cool, because it's a good thing. I mean, I did a presentation at a psychiatry hospital last week about keto. And I think many has this preconception that, psychiatric patients, they just sit there and they're depressed and they eat unhealthy, they're not motivated. And I started on Facebook. In Denmark, I started a Facebook group only for the ketogenic diet and bipolar. And we're like 180 people who's bipolar and following the diet. And then I did another group with mental illness, who's on English, which is a very much smaller group. But what I experienced from these people is that they may not be compliant all the time, but they are highly motivated to do anything to better their situation.
That's so interesting. And so the 150 people are all following ketogenic diet and they're bipolar, or?
Yeah, the 180. So they are all of them are on a ketogenic diet, or have been, or at least on and off a ketogenic diet. But I mean, the group is specific for people who has a bipolar diagnosis and are following the diet. Also, it's like they can also be a little bit like low carbish, but most of them are like a keto. But then, of course, I see that people are struggling with compliance, and then they get some symptoms, and then something happens in their life, and then they fall off the wagon, and then they feel more shitty, and then they get back to it again. But they want to do something, and they're interested, and they're interacting, and sharing recipes and saying, for Christmas I'm doing this keto candy and this, and
wow, we gotta get our hands on these people, Ian. This is like a wealth of podcast guests for us.
Like it's amazing how many people are doing it, and it's one of the things we keep saying as well, is people are already doing the diet for bipolar because they feel an effect of it. So we might as well study it. It's like we tried to get funding from like a traditional funder a couple of years ago, and it was to the university, and they just weren't interested because there wasn't enough case studies and not enough pilot data. And then thankfully through the Bazooka Trust, we got funding to do the pilot much earlier than we ever could have done through traditional routes, because they saw the reasoning behind this and the evidence for, there's loads of other independent reasons to think that it could work for bipolar, like the high rates of insulin resistance, mitochondrial dysfunction. And so we're making progress, but there's so many people doing it, and it's not reflected in the scientific literature. So if you're a kind of like mainstream university, it's hard to, at this stage, it's kind of like you don't get a sense just from the published case studies, and we're working on that as well.
I mean, there is one study I used in my presentation, which is a study with 274 participants, where they actually did it because they went into this forum. So it's the whole study is based on an online forum with people who has bipolar. I don't know if you read it or seen it, that they just answer, they look at the comments and they compare it with other forums, with other diets, and then they compare, so it just gives an indication that you have like 275 something people there following the diet who is commenting about how, they're doing and stuff. It's not a controlled trial. It's not an intervention, but it's an indication, that this has potential anyways, I think.
That was actually the first study I put out on. We made a text mining script.
Oh, you were in it?
I did the study with a kind of just because I couldn't find enough case studies on this published, so I just started trying to bring some of the forum kind of posts into the literature and show that this is being used a lot. But it's I think hopefully.
Great study.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I was waiting to see if you'd find something wrong with it there. It's always helpful to have feedback. I think, so I think over time, so we've just got approval to start publishing case studies to the university for this. So you went from being someone that was going through these very dark depressions and suicidal, and having all this, and you're now an assistant professor studying ketogenic diet at a major university in Europe, and you're doing really exciting work at speaking at conferences. How does it feel to have gone through that massive life transition, and how do you see the role of keto in that overall?
I mean, I think I pinch myself, often and think, I did it even more a couple of years ago when I was kind of closer to my very severe illness. And I was thinking, oh my God, I can walk by this house without counting the or stuff like that. But I think that I'm not giving myself enough credit to where I am. I think a downside for me to be so ambitious and be so goal orientated is that when I finished the patients in my master's, even though I hadn't looked at my data, I hadn't written my thesis yet, I just went to my supervisor and I said, can we have a meeting about my PhD? So I'm always ahead, and then when I delivered my master's, I got the highest grade. I had kind of one day with my boyfriend, we were relaxing, driving, we went out to eat and stuff, but then it was like the next thing. So I think that a friend of mine said recently, the one that introduced me to keto, she said to me, do you realize what you've been doing in 5-6 years? And I'm like, that's true. But I don't think that I'm in the daily life, I'm just grinding, I'm just going to the next. And in a way, it's also a bad thing because it's kind of the next fix or the next project. And it's always a new article, a new project. You can do this, but it also removes you a little bit being present in time because you're just going after. But I do think that, it's amazing that I found keto to improve my illness. And now I'm doing this as my job. And I think for me, there's a huge difference when I look at my classmates and also people that I'm working with who has the same education as me at the same time. I known since 16 that I wanted to do something with keto. I didn't know maybe at that point that it would be brain injury, and I knew I wanted to do a PhD, but, I have this path in a way, I have this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And if I wasn't working with this, I was studying, I read about keto since I started doing keto myself. I read articles, I read blogs, I watched YouTube. So I was doing the research in a way anyways, and now I just do it for a living. So definitely, I would not be here if it wasn't, for keto.
That's so awesome. It's just so impressive that you could go from, because I have a lot of friends in Scotland who are bipolar, and the suicide rate here is very high, quarter, 50%.
Wow.
And it's very difficult to live even in like a normal life, let alone to do academic work and to be a assistant professor at a major university and then studying keto. So I totally understand what that means. It takes so much incredible determination.
But it's not easy. It's not easy. I mean, I do. Yeah. I think it's also it's very important that to also say that, you know, if you look at a podcast or if you look at my Facebook or LinkedIn, at anybody, not only me, but then you can think, yeah, but you know, she is very successful, or she is successful in the way that, you know, she can live a normal life and she has a career and the beginning of her career. But it's so hard. It's so hard to have this fluctuations in energy. Yeah. And some days I can't sleep because I'm writing emails until 1 o'clock in the morning. And I have these 3 days where I'm a little bit hyper and everything goes really fast. And then I have 3 days where I'm just like, oh, I have this, I'm going to lecture and my brain is not working. I just feel like crying all day. Yeah. So, I mean, it's a huge handicap in a way, but still, I think being bipolar, it's also humbles you and it gives you a lot of things too. You are more grateful about the small things in life because you have this struggle with your mind, with your body. Yeah. So you don't take things for granted the same way as maybe other people would do.
I think, I noticed that a lot of I'm amazed at the number of PhDs we've had in our podcast. There's like, or academics, or people that are publishing papers, or, you know, or people that are just very engaged with life and doing things that are quite remarkable. You know, it's funny. You wouldn't necessarily assume. And I think, you know, I think what's amazing about this is that it's affected your life and you're now giving it back to other people. You're telling other people about it. And also you're being open about having bipolar disorder, which I personally really respect because I understand how difficult that is and what a major decision it is. And in a lot of ways, Matt helped me to talk about it because we were going to some similar meetings and I was kind of saying, oh, Matt's like talking about this and everyone's okay about it. And I was still I had like a blog talking about keto and bipolar, but I didn't put my name on it. And then it kind of encouraged me to talk about it in some of our meetings. And then eventually I found out, oh, there's actually a lot of supportive attitudes towards this and people are more understanding than I expected. And how have you found it being public about bipolar as an academic and and just in general?
I mean, I don't know what people think. I think that for most people, it's really positive. I know that when I was in a meeting with the people at the clinic where I wanted to do my master's, there was this chief physician, and he asked me, he had been working with epilepsy, and I said, I want to do this keto and blah, blah, blah. And I think he asked me something like, why are you interested in keto? And I just went, well, I'm bipolar, so I'm doing keto myself. And I could see in his face, he was like, okay. You know, he didn't really know how to respond because I was also kind of confident in it, like, you know, and my professor knows it, all my colleagues. I mean, I even told everybody, not like I told the class, but I mean, in all the groups that I was in during my studies, I have to tell them because I was struggling so much. And I've been so embarrassed in group work. I mean, most of the exams has been individual. So if I was doing poorly, it was on me. But when we were doing group works, I mean, statistics, I suck at statistics. And why do I do that? Because I just couldn't follow along because of my bipolar. I don't think that I'm less qualified to know statistics, but it was in these courses, I just had bad episodes. And with statistics and math, if the ball starts rolling and you don't follow along, then you can't catch up. And we're doing this group work. And I just had to say to everybody, I'm really sorry that I'm not following along. I can't participate the same way you're doing to this assignment that we have to hand in. And my name was on it because I have bipolar disorder and I have this periods. And then in some group work, I could go, like we had a review at some point, but then I just went off this crazy, you know, I was doing all the literature searches and everything. And the other members had to say to me, hey, Maria, in 4 days, you have done the work for the whole group and we can follow along. So can you please turn it down?
So that's the trick, Maria. You got to get your hypomania, and you just do all the work, and you do like a month's work in about 4 days.
Yeah.
And when you crash, you can just take a big vacation, and then you have your next one, and then that's it.
Yeah,
and that's what you do.
That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing. That is what I'm doing. So to answer your question, like, I think that, I mean, the response has been positive, I think, and I think that most people it's, you know, respecting it. And I'm some people, I'm not saying it straight away, but I mean, most people, everybody at my section knows that I'm bipolar. And also because I post on it also on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is also more academic and work related. And I also posted very openly on Facebook. But I think for me, it was when I was the most suicidal, I kind of said to the universe, you know, if I ever survive this, I did not think I would survive it, but then I would kind of use my life to inspire other people, because I felt the thing that I lacked when I was the most sick was that I didn't know anybody with mental illness. I didn't know anybody, even on the internet. I was a lot on Instagram that time. I didn't know anybody with bipolar disorder that had came out on the other side. And all my surrounding friends said, yeah, you're going to be fine. You know, I know how you feel. And I was like, no, you don't know how I feel. I'm sitting here for half a year. I can't move I'm living in my car sometimes. Yeah. I can't move. This is not how you feel. You have never experienced this. So I think for me, it's more important to be an advocate than what people think about me in academia.
I really respect and appreciate that, and I understand that how much courage it takes to do that, and I think it is so helpful. And I think that the more you I think because you're such an articulate and intelligent and clearly successful person, it just means that it teaches other people about what bipolar is like you can be a really high functioning person, and often I find that bipolar people are much more compassionate, empathetic, understanding, and insightful about certain aspects of life than you could be having not gone through it. So it's fantastic that you're talking about it, and especially at the university as well. You've inspired me, because I tell certain people, but maybe it's time to be even more open about it and to break some of the stigma about it. But it's people like you who break that stigma by being cool. So thank you very much for.
But I mean, you can look at it that, I mean, some of the most amazing creators in academia and also in art and everything has been bipolar. So I mean, it is like you have the downside of it when you're depressed and everything, but also there's a brilliance to it. And I think that brilliance is not only due to mania or hypomania. I think that bipolar people are really creative. I think that a lot of bipolar people are quite intelligent, and they have a lot of interest, and they're very intellectual and also very creative when it comes to art or music or all kinds of stuff. So I think that it's also a strength. It's a struggle, but it's a strength. It comes with a lot of gifts, I think. So I don't think it's something, I mean, I think it's really important to say this is not, would you be ashamed to have cancer? I mean, if you would you be like, oh, I shouldn't tell my boss I have cancer. I mean, I need to go to this. Would you be ashamed if you had MS or something else? You wouldn't, because everybody would accept it. But being bipolar is like, oh, I'm the crazy one at work. And I don't think, for me, I think all illnesses like the environment and the genetics and everything is kind of coming together. So I think that bipolar has a lot of environmental factors, but I think it's a physical illness in the brain that has partly mental symptoms, partly physical symptoms, like we talked about,
And I hope that keto can help to unravel some of that, because I think that if once we can show, like with cancer, there's you can show someone a scan saying I have cancer, or you can see a blood test and you have a marker, and with bipolar that doesn't exist at the moment. But I do hope that in time we'll develop those diagnostic tools where we can actually show, and someone can go to their employer or to their friends and say, here's what I have, and here's here's what actually shows that. And I think it will be much easier. But in the meantime, we have to go through this phase of just, speaking about ourselves. But
Yeah.
so you've been so generous with your time. I want to be respectful of it. So I'm sorry that we've run over a little bit, but thank you.
That's super great.
And
I'm always happy to speak. Everybody who knows me knows that I'm a big speaker.
we'll look forward to hearing you in Switzerland as well. Do you have any closing questions or thoughts, Matt?
No. Oh, you were. Yes, sorry.
I don't. I am so glad that we're finally getting some of this information out there, because there are a lot of people who are struggling in silence, who are trying medication and therapy and want to get well, but don't know about this as a potential treatment. So I am so excited we're finally doing this, and that we're also Ian, the study. I can't wait to see what comes of that. Yeah. And Maria, your journey and what you've been through and what you were doing now and the recovery is just so remarkable. So thank you for coming on.
I'm so thankful. Thank you very much.